Ladies and gentlemen, may I direct your attention to something quite extraordinary?
You're talking to two guys from Hialeah and West Kendall and one with a Raleigh Fingers mustache, so I think you're good.
Ricky Vaughn style, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Who flips their bat like that in a single?
I'm here for
A guy that's hitting 200, bro.
Listen, you paid $5 for your ticket, even if you're sitting behind home plate.
Gets paid the big bucks. He knows a little better than I do.
And he's very handsome.
So handsome.
super handsome.
Your expectations as a Marlins fan should have changed by now.
All the feels, man. Like, I love Pablito so much.
Lineup doesn't take all your balls.
It depends on what you give up,
I
man.
don't like that question, Danny.
I don't.
Why would you let me see it if I can't have it? Like, I feel like the Marlins.
Jerk.
Starting staff has looked so much better.
All three of them.
I'm looking forward to this one, guys. I believe.
The Marlins have the worst run differential in the National League.
Oh man, now this was the wrong choice, but
I am ready to get hurt again.
The Battered Marlins fans are back. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 37 of the Battered Marlins Fans Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Granada, and alongside me, as always, you got three other Battered fans. From my left to your right, Mr. Bratton Griffin. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I was doing great until we got the news a couple minutes ago that we're going to dive into. Now I'm doing a little bit less great, but my Cougars are making their March Madness debut today. That's why I'm repping the Cougar shirt. It's been 8 years since we've been back, so hopefully they make some noise. And, other than that, doing good.
Love to hear it. Mr. Spaz, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. 1 week closer to opening day. So
We're at this point next week, we're already one game in.
we are. Yeah. So very excited about
We're
that.
going to be one game over 500.
Ooh, on pace to be 162-0. I love it.
Yep.
I mean, I guess we'll get into it in a second. And Callie, how you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. Happy to be back after missing the last two, I think.
The last one,
But yeah, we're a week away from opening day. Rosters are slowly being finalized. Cuts keep coming. So we'll know the song and dance pretty shortly.
Well, somebody that isn't going to make the cut. Unfortunately, we were talking about JD Martinez not too long ago. We thought that he would come back home on a decent deal. He got 1 year, $12 million to play with the fucking Mets. I mean, we don't want to spend too much time on that scrub anymore. But real quick, how do you guys feel now that he's a scrub to me now? Now that he's over there getting overpaid by the New York Mets. Spaz, how do you feel? I know you wanted JD.
Yeah, man. I think I mean, just like every other Marlins fan wanted him. Yeah. And it's funny. I just wrote to Danny, the Godfather, on Twitter, and he had called it. He called JD to the Mets like 3 weeks ago. I don't know if our boy got sources or not, but it sucks, man. It would have been nice to have him here, and we're just broke. We're just so fucking broke that we can't offer that man a deal that would bring him, home. So it's awful. It sucks. We moved.
12 mil is a lot. Brant, would you have given him anywhere near 12 mil?
I think highest I probably would have gone is 8. I think 8 a year I would have been happy with. I think that's probably somewhere close to where the Marlins may or may not have kind of like started the conversation at. I think maybe 6 is probably where they started it at. But I mean, 12 million I think is too much for him, especially because you're looking at a pure DH. It's not a guy that can rotate into other positions.
Right.
And if I'm the Marlins at 12 million a year, I'm saying, well, we already have Avi Garcia, so we don't need JD Martinez for 12 mil.
Oh, that hurts when you put it that way. Callie, how are you feeling about this Marlins roster now that we're not going to have that DH JD Martinez?
It hurts, man, because we needed to replace those George Solar power numbers, and we're just not doing that. It looks like we're going to go into the season with what we have, and we're not going to, that's 30 home runs he hit last year, man. And, him coming home, I wouldn't have given him $12 million. I think the way the Mets have been spending lately, I think they're the only team that would give him $12 million. And, fuck the Mets. And I hate the Mets more than I think any other North American franchise on the planet. Really? So that one stings. But, I probably hate the Jets more, but it's baseball. It's it's frustrating, man. In terms of the regular roster, I mean, I think that and it's something we're going to touch on more in a bit as we get into the Jazz interview. The locker room culture is great. Guys are bought in. We haven't played poorly this spring by any stretch. Hopefully, between full season of Berger and Bell, and TA has a bounce back year, and who knows if we can really truly replace those power numbers. But where I see this roster is that we are greatly lacking. We're going to greatly lack in home runs this year. But we'll see.
Unfortunate. Super.
Yeah, because we have nobody to. Well, I mean, I guess Bell and Berger to fill in for what we're missing with solar power. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that would have been a good acquisition. But look, like you said, Spaz, somebody called it a couple weeks ago. But who else would overpay for a player? The Mets. That's what they do.
They got an owner that's just going to overcompensate by spending stupid money.
Yeah. That guy's an idiot. That guy sucks ass. He's the worst owner ever. All right. Anyway, don't want to talk about the Mets and JD Martinez anymore. We're disappointed, but that's it. It ends there, I guess. So let's talk about the topic of the day. Spaz is wearing the shirt. It's been the talk of
Is that my shirt?
Twitter.
Our shirt, sir.
We share it.
I have yours. I have yours in my car. I gotta give it to you. I love this shirt.
That's a great shirt.
It is a very cool shirt. I like that shirt also. I wanted to go to the ballpark when they had that. They were giving that out. So the talk of Marlins Twitter over the last 48 hours that the interview released has been the Jazz Chisholm interview. You guys thought that it was crazy, that I was questioning whether it was good or bad. I'm not really sure. I listened to it for the first time today.
It's about to get crazy. I can tell you right now.
So I was obviously, once we went back and forth a little bit on text, we decided to hold off and leave it for the pod because I think we were in disagreement. Because I want to say all three of you thought that it was great for Jazz. I didn't think it was as good. So
you can't say we were in disagreement. You were in disagreement.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Now that I think about
it. Right. But
Jazz, if you're watching,
we're going to get into it.
We all love you. If you want to come on the pod, we'll do a Danny-less pod.
Well, for the record, I think this is where we get lost in translation because I feel people think that they need to blindly defend a player to like him. I like him. I just don't think it was good. I don't. Doesn't mean I don't like him, but I don't think that it was that good of a look for him.
So let's start there. Why do you think it was a bad look for him?
Well, I was going to tell you that I feel like the guys from the pivot, Channing Crowder, Fred Taylor, and Ryan Clark, I thought that there were moments where they were trying to direct him like, hey, what you're saying, let's rephrase that in the way that they were questioning him. And he's like, I'm going to stand on this. Yeah, maybe being arrogant isn't a good thing, but I think you need to be a little bit arrogant to be a baseball player. And I felt like he just kept saying some things that I was like, you probably should have reworded that a little bit, because you are coming off as very arrogant. And when he talked about his first 3 years in the league, maybe the veterans weren't the best, right? But before you heard about this, from everything I have understood, you guys all thought Miggy Rojas was a great guy. Obviously, we don't know him in the locker room, but he seemed like he was a good guy. But the way he came at him and said, man, there's people here that have been here for 10 years, and they suck, but they're still here. And it's like, all right. Like, I feel like he came in to the league a little bit immature. And it sounds like the way he's talking about things after Skip has gotten here, he started to mature. But I feel like the way it came off in the first 3 years of his career, he might have been really immature.
Now, what I'll counter with that is that where we may label it immaturity, I think it's just raw emotion. And I think he kind of touched on, not directly, but definitely implicitly, that he is the way he is because he's been on his own since he was 12. Like, you know what it is to leave the only place you've ever known to go to the middle fucking nowhere in Kansas,
right?
You're
clue. I had no clue about that.
I didn't know about that.
Wichita, Kansas.
Well, until the interview started, I had no idea what his youth background in baseball was.
Neither did I.
But as someone who went through the youth baseball circuit, right? Like, I played in all those tournaments. I played against the FTBs, the Team Mizunos, the Team DeMarinis. I played against all all those clubs, and it's super competitive. And the fact that he came over here as a kid, probably one of the only black kids in the school he was at. He was at a private school in Wichita, Kansas. Always the youngest in his team, graduated high school at 16. He was in a position that I think he just had to kind of defend himself really quickly. And something I really appreciated about this interview is that instead of like doing the cookie cutter, like, just, kind of like that scene in Bull Durham, like, work on your cliches, like, say exactly what the media wants to hear. Like he did the
Danny's
opposite.
never
Like,
seen the movie. He doesn't get the reference.
he's unapologetically himself, and I appreciate that. Yeah, and I agree with you, Danny. Like you can tell that Channing and Fred and Ryan Clark were kind of trying to tell him like, hey man, but what about this? Like, don't you think? And he's like, no, and I can appreciate that kind of honesty from a player, and we'll get into all the other stuff, but that's just like an overarching view of the interview and why he was the kind of
right. And I want to give Spaz and Brighton a chance a second, but like when you're in a working environment, like I'm sure we all have coworkers that we're like, this guy's a piece of shit, but we have to figure out how to work with him and how to talk to him, how to communicate with him. And I felt like from what he said, he might have tried a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, but he's like, yeah, I'm just give up. Like, I'm not even going to try. And it's like, but dude, you're a professional now. Like, you have to figure it out. And there's other stuff, and we're going to get into it in a sec. But overall, Spaz, how did you feel about the interview just in general before we get into the specifics?
I mean, I did love it. I did love it. I agree with Callie that he just had to defend himself from a very early age. Again, we didn't know about the whole Wichita, Kansas thing.
Wow, that was weird, yeah.
The part that also, I think, made him a lot more tough is that he went back to the Bahamas and they used to call him white boy. Because he wasn't even accepted in the Bahamas, because he was living in the States. So they called him white boy. And I think all that just together, it made him just nails. And he said it a couple times, like, I'm not going to let somebody talk to me like that, whether it was in the early baseball days. And he said it all the time. He said, I kept learning. And listen, after this interview, he's probably going to learn from this and it's not going to happen again, because he said in the beginning, when he was in the minors, he said it was raw talent. It was raw talent. We'll get into that a little later, but he said it was raw talent. He didn't know baseball. When he got to the majors, he learned baseball. When he did the arbitration, oh shit, I learned the arbitration. Like, it's not going to happen to me again. So I think Jazz is just obviously still very young. He's got a ton of spirit, just a ton of energy. And I think he just learns with each experience, and he's going to get better with it. But I overall really enjoyed the interview, man. I was a huge fan before. I'm a bigger fan now. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I think initially I thought, well, the baseball traditionalists are going to hate this for sure. But I loved it. Could he have changed some words? Yeah, maybe, but I thought it was fine.
Brian, what do you think?
I just like, the majority of us, I loved it. I thought it was authentic. I thought like, this is Jazz. Like, this is the Jazz we all like knew was there. We knew this is how he was, but we don't get to see very often. And we got to see him. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate him opening up and being vulnerable in that moment, because what's happening is like, you have a contingent on Twitter that's going after him. And then you have the majority of people are like rallying around him. And I think it takes a lot of personal courage to be that authentic with people, because he doesn't know. Maybe he knows Channing Crowder a little bit, but he doesn't know the other guys. Like, he didn't even know one of the guys' names. Like, and so, for him to open up and be honest about his experiences, and, for him to also, like, we're talking about it like, oh, this is immature or whatever, but he didn't leak any of this to the media when it was happening. Like, he tried to shut up and just do and go along and follow Derek Jeter's advice and just play the game. And it didn't work for him. And I think if we want to say that somebody's immature, like, he would have brought it up at the time and like made it a big deal. And he didn't do that. He respected the locker room. He kept it in the clubhouse, and he went about his business, and he made an all-star team. And with a broken back and a messed up meniscus, and he went out there and did what he had to do. And, while I don't agree, like, yeah, he could have polished some things up. I appreciate the rawness of the interview. I appreciate that it was actually his words and it wasn't like through a PR person. And, you know, if Rojas did half the shit that Jazz said, then fuck that guy. Like, that's not how you want a leader in your clubhouse to work. And I have to say, during his time here was probably the worst this team has ever looked on the field. And a lot of that is probably having to do with the attitudes that were going on in the clubhouse. And so I think part of this interview is Jazz saying, like, hey, this is how far we've come as a team. We put in the work together to get to this point. And guess what? We're not going back to that. We're learning from that and we're moving on. And I loved it and I respect him for it. And I'm normally a guy who, like, once a guy leaves the Marlins, I maybe I'll follow his career a little bit and you know, that's it. But listen, I don't care what jersey that man puts on. He's got me in his corner for life.
Who, Jazz?
Because there's no other major leaguer out there right now who has given an interview where they were that authentic and that open and that vulnerable and let us see like who they really are. And I don't know how you walk away having listened to his whole story and not respect the man.
I love confident players. I think arrogance turns me off. And he came off as very arrogant in that interview. They asked him, how do you feel about Kansas? That worked out for you? Nah, I still hate that decision. If I would have gone to Orlando, I would have been a first-round pick. I would have been getting millions right now. It's like, all right, my guy. He's like, I made it to pros, and I didn't even know how to play. I didn't even know how to play, and I made the majors.
But he's not wrong. If he went to a baseball powerhouse school in Florida, he would have gone in the first round, and he would have had coaches who could have developed his talent. He went to a basketball school in Kansas.
Yeah, with a bunch of European dudes.
Yeah. But he's not wrong.
It didn't come off as overly arrogant on that, to the point where they brought it up. It's like, well, are you arrogant or confident? Because I think confidence is necessary in pro sports.
Yeah.
Arrogance, I think, is a turnoff in a locker room. And I think that there's a good chance that's what kind of shifted the locker room when you first got there. Because if you come in as the new guy, but you're highly arrogant and you're like, man, these guys around me suck. And I'm here, I'm a rookie and I'm balling. And it's not like he just thought it. He was saying it right now in the interview. I'm sure he must have let it be known while he was there. You don't think that turns off the locker room just a little bit? Like, that's not and again, it sounds like he's matured. It sounds like the locker room is great now. And he credited to Skip. And I have a feeling that, let's say hypothetically, this season, Cooper would have just joined the team this year. I think he might get along with Cooper a little better now because he's in a different place maturity-wise. But during the first 3 years, from what he was saying, it sounded like he wasn't necessarily the easiest person to get along with in the locker room either. And that's what I got. I got an abundance of arrogance coming out of Jazz in all his comments, at least from what he was explaining from his first 3 years in the league.
So on that, he admitted he's arrogant. He said it. When they asked him, like, 100%. Are you arrogant or are you confident? And he said, I'm arrogant.
Yeah.
And the thing is, man, like, I've only played a college schedule, man. Like, I haven't played 162 games in a year.
Right.
You know, dude, like, to survive, to have the mental endurance to get through a season, you need to be that way, man. And especially at that level, like, you know, you need to believe you're the best. You're the best around. You have to. And the thing is, again, like, I know the word arrogant is kind of a buzzword and it kind of like turns people off. Mm-hmm. But again, I think once you kind of follow his story, it makes sense. Like, you know, again, like, yeah, he said like, like he says like, yeah, I still think it was a bad decision to go to Kansas. If I would have gone to Florida, you know, it would have been a first round pick. But like, and not to say that that's true because you never know. You know, ifs, ands, and buts don't mean a damn thing.
Yeah, if he was playing against better competition, maybe he wouldn't have made it as far.
Yeah, that could have very easily be the outcome. Mm-hmm. But again, you have a guy that was always the youngest guy around, always the best player, didn't have a lot of guidance, man. Like, this is a kid that went through life at a very early age alone.
Yeah, he said since he was 12, he was out of the house.
He didn't have somebody sitting him down at night and telling him like, hey man, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You need to be this way or that way. Like he was probably living with a host family in Wichita. He was just going to school, coming home, and it's like, he's had to kind of teach himself. And again, he survived through high school, through the minors on pure raw talent. He admitted it. And this is to me, this is a sense of maturity, is that he admitted it. He's like, yeah, I didn't know shit about baseball. I was just going up there and swinging. Like he wasn't looking at tendencies. He probably wasn't looking at, watching film and seeing how he's swinging, how the ball's coming off his bat. He probably didn't have anyone really talking to him and telling him like, hey man, we need to do X, Y, and Z. He was just going up there and he was just better than everyone. So then he gets to the Marlins, he gets traded to the Marlins, and again, he talks about the conversation with Derek Jeter where Jeter said, like, I wanted you here and I gave up what I had to. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
We gave up Zach Gallen, and Zach Gallen was a Cy Young candidate.
Yep.
Like, the pressure was on and he's performed. That's the thing. Like, sure, he's been hurt. Yeah, but he's been a good player for us since he's got here. He was an all-star. He was on the cover of the show, and in terms of the locker room stuff.
And I love what he said about the show cover, though, because he said he told his agent, he goes, listen, I don't even want to hear about being on the show until I win an MVP.
Yeah.
Like, he's arrogant, but he's also like, I feel like he's also kind of grounded. Yeah. Because he's got like,
so high.
Yeah. Like, he's arrogant, but I think a lot of that is just talk. Because like some of his actions say otherwise. Like if he was completely arrogant, there's no way he wouldn't be at shortstop right now. He would have never said, I'm going to move to center field. And he basically said as much. He's like, I decided to try and be selfless and move to center field so that it gave us the best chance to win.
And
he also said that if he would have played all season, he would have been the best center fielder in the league.
Mm-hmm. He was on pace.
He was having a solid year, but I think more so it's like the locker room stuff. Okay. So, and this is where I can speak on experience a little bit, obviously not to the extent of Jazz Chisholm or Major League Clubhouse, but I remember my freshman year, I get to school and we have this one senior who's an absolute cunt, straight up team captain. Like, and the weirdest thing this guy fucking did is he'd walk around wearing
Columbus for sure.
Huh?
Graduated from Columbus for sure.
No, yeah, I was in North Carolina, remember, but he went to Manatee High School in Florida. I'm not gonna say his name, but I'll just give you that. Which was a powerhouse, straight up a powerhouse at the time down here. And he would walk around wearing his high school state championship ring, playing college ball.
Oh, God.
And whatever, like I understood the expectation that like freshmen had to rake the infield, and you had to pick up the balls, and you had to put away the equipment and take it out and shit like that, and that's fine. But we'd be in the locker room when we were playing, and like, and this is when I finally kind of stepped up to him. I was sitting there, I was playing Fight Night in the PlayStation inside the locker room, and the guy walks in, he takes it out of my hand and just told me like, "Oh, I'm playing now." And I straight up asked him like, "Who the fuck are you, bro?" And he just goes like this. He shows me his ring. He's wearing two rings, one here, one here. I'm like, that doesn't mean shit, dog. We're in college. Why are you showing me high school rings? What have you won here? You haven't won shit, bro. And he just kind of stared at me, and he started like this whole thing or whatever. And like some of the guys were on my side, and a lot of the especially the older guys were on his side. But you know what? It took those guys leaving for us to become better as a program. And by the time I left, we were ranked nationally. Like, it's there's a right way and a wrong way to lead. Okay, and what I appreciate about Jazz is that he didn't spill anything. He didn't talk about what happened in the team meeting. He didn't talk about, what was said and whatever. The only thing is he mentioned how some of the things that were brought up about him were shit that had nothing to do with baseball. Like, oh, he's not wearing the right shoes in the plane. Like, oh, like they took his cleats that he designed and threw them in the garbage. And it took
cut him and then threw him in the garbage.
Yeah,
that was outlandish. That was stupid. When I heard that, that's fucked up that they did.
I just can't believe that somebody went to the coach on the plane.
And someone snitched. That's not leadership, dog. Like that straight up. Like if that's really what happened, and again, there's three sides to a story, right? There's his story, there's Jazz's story, Miggy's story, and the truth, right? It's going to be somewhere right there in the middle. But if that shit is true, and we have no reason to believe it's not, then Miggy wasn't a good leader, like straight up. And I have reason to believe because I did some searching. I think the other captain he was mentioning was George Alfaro, but dog, like we loved Miggy while I was here. All right. And it has nothing to do with Miggy as a servant to the club and us as fans. All right. So, and that's fine. But clearly he wasn't a good leader because the proof is in the pudding. We played better after he left. We played better after Alfaro left. And with the Jazz arrogance thing, like, sure, okay, he's arrogant. Maybe he's a handful to deal with in the locker room sometimes. Although he says he didn't talk to anybody. He slept. He would show up early. He'd get his work in, and then he'd sleep, and then he'd go play. But
Or he'd watch anime with Starling Marte.
Yeah,
which was freaking awesome.
After every game, and we've seen this if you go to the game, he stays behind and he signs autographs for kids.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe he's arrogant in the way he plays, and maybe he's arrogant in the way he carries himself, but he's not arrogant towards other people, I think. At least
that's why I disagree. I think that he might be arrogant towards his teammates to the fact where he didn't bother even trying to communicate with them. Like, I understand that watching him play is awesome, and as a fan, you root for him and you want him to do well, and you like the arrogance when he's doing the Euro step, when he's crossing home plate. That's awesome. But I try to picture myself in that clubhouse, and somebody that's that arrogant and just says that I don't care, I'm just going to come here and do my job, I don't need to talk to anybody. I feel like that isn't necessarily somebody that I would want in my clubhouse. But that doesn't seem like somebody that's easy to work with.
But the thing is somebody doesn't get there on their own. Like, Jazz is doing those things now. He's practicing with the team. He's constantly like in social media right now with his teammates. You don't get there on your own. You don't just decide I'm not going to practice with these guys. Like, he didn't just get to the big leagues and say, well, fuck these guys, I'm better than them. Like, the clubhouse pushed him to that. That is what he said. No, there's no way that's what happened. And I think that's Jazz not saying a lot more that happened to him.
And also he talked about how in the minors he was always cool with his teammates.
Yeah. And he talked about how he got thrown out of his first big league camp in Miami because somebody talked to him disrespectfully. He's like, hey, don't talk to me like that. And then it became a big thing. And Jazz is the guy that's very much what I got out of this interview is about respect. And he wasn't respected by anybody like in that locker room. So as a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, if you're in a situation where you feel like the whole locker room is against you, we wouldn't expect a 21-year-old in the business world to be able to resolve that type of hostility on their own. So why are we expecting a 21-year-old baseball player to be able to resolve that type of hostility on his own?
I'm in the
He's
education
doing what
system.
he thinks is best, and his thing is to avoid the issue. My problem with that is Don Mattingly, as the manager, should have stepped up and put his foot down and squashed it.
Yeah,
that's what he should have done.
That man was out the door.
No, he didn't do that because Jazz was still doing that in 2022. Don Mattingly had no control over that locker room, is what I got from that interview.
That is very true. 100%.
And that's the problem. He let that locker room push Jazz out. Had he addressed it early on, we'd probably be talking something different. We'd probably be like, Jazz would have been like, oh, me and Rojas had this issue, but we worked it out and then moved on. Yeah. Because now he's describing his teammates like Luis Ariz as his brother. Nick Gordon is his best friend. He loves TA. He loves Berger. He loves Bell. He loves all these guys, and he wants to be around them. Like, he's clearly not a person who doesn't want to be around his teammates. But as a young kid, he didn't know how to fix the problem, so he avoided it. And that's what all of us probably would have done at 21. So I have no problem with it.
But that's what I'm saying about he used to be immature, and it sounds like he's maturing now.
Yeah,
and I'm in the education system, and I've seen 17, 18-year-olds all the time that they're difficult to deal with because they seem to think that everybody's trying to disrespect them for some reason. Mm-hmm. And they have a very weird way of seeing the world where they feel, and I get it, because a lot of them, it's because of their circumstances back at home or the things that they've gone through. But you try to talk them through it, and it's very difficult because they feel like a lot of things are disrespect when you're like, I don't think that was it. I think they might have just been trying to either guide you or correct something that they think that maybe you should do better. And it sounds like a lot of that might have happened with him. And to Cali's point where he said, the way he was brought up, it makes sense that he was acting that way. And I'm not going to discredit that. I agree. But to an extent, because yes, you give that grace when you acknowledge his past, but at the same time, you're in the pro level, and we have to figure out how to work through this. And the fact that he kind of just shut down for 3 years, I'm assuming that was a very difficult personality to deal with in the clubhouse. Now it sounds like it's gotten a lot better, which is great, and I hope that it translates to on the field success. But the first 3 seasons, I'm assuming that he was very difficult to deal with. So much so that they were talking about that meeting that they had, right? That meeting that they had, yeah, where they started addressing things that were off the field. And I feel like if it gets to a point where people need to call a meeting to address off the field things, it's because things are probably to a point where they're like, this needs to be addressed because this can't continue. And I understand why he would be like, oh, but why would we talk about anything that's off the field? Obviously, there was an issue there because otherwise this wouldn't have happened. Spaz?
But it's also
Go ahead.
Jazz stole the captain's best friend's position. Like that plays into it. Like it's not like these leaders in the clubhouse are being super mature either. You know, is my 2 cents.
Spaz, go ahead. I was gonna say one else, but I want to hear what Spaz has to say.
No, so I was gonna mention that there, because you mentioned arrogancy, him being arrogant and this and that. But there is a point in the interview where he talks about having guys like Tim Anderson, Gordon. He has all his, he has his best friend. He has
this year,
and he's like, now we're talking shit. Because now if you make, now they're being arrogant together, or, what you would call arrogant or whatever, they're just talking shit back and forth. Like, oh, it's going to be that kind of day. Oh, you're going to get that. You're going to get that. And I think that's what motivates him. And he would like other people to be like that. Just like, whatever motivates you, like that fires him up. And I think that's a thing. And it reminded me because he touched on Jordan as well. If you guys watched the Jordan documentary, somebody told Jordan that like, oh, he's an arrogant prick or he's an asshole or something like that. And Jordan said something to the effect of like, well, that's because you've never won anything. Like, you guys remember that quote?
Yeah.
And Jazz touches on this. Like, Jordan is a huge, and he touched on the autograph or whatever, that Jordan didn't even autograph. I think that's a thing, man. Like, he just wants to like push everyone to be that way. Not push everyone, but like he wants everyone to have that energy. Because they want to win something. He wants to win something. He wants everyone to be the best version of himself. And if that's shit talking or being arrogant, then it is what it is. But that's how I saw it. It's not so much being arrogant. He just wants everyone, when he steps on the field or when the Marlins step on the field or whoever his teammates are, he wants, all right, we're fucking here. We're going to do something.
I think the way he phrased a lot of the stuff is what made it sound worse. Because, for example, when he would be like, dude, why are you talking shit to me? I'm an all-star. You don't even fucking play. You suck. And it's like,
I get it.
Like, it doesn't.
What you mean. I get what you mean.
And I think that the guys from the pivot were like, "This isn't coming off well," and they tried to bring him around. And he like Kali said, he was very authentic, which I also like when people are authentic. But man, that arrogance was wild. And I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about the whole Cooper thing, because I thought it was wild that he actually said, Cooper is not extending or doing splits for him.
Yeah.
He had 17 errors, and then Jazz all of a sudden, to avoid that, figured out a way to throw it basically between his eyes to make sure that there were no errors. So he had to improve next year and be a lot more accurate with his passes. And supposedly when somebody else was playing, all of a sudden Cooper started making spectacular catches. Yeah. And I think that, and when I heard that, I thought back to what I was telling you about when I've seen those students that feel like they're constantly getting disrespected. They also constantly feel like people are doing them dirts just because they're not liked. I can't imagine that Cooper's really doing that. Now, is that me being naive? Because I feel like Cooper wants to win the game, and he's trying to do whatever he can to win the game. Is that me being naive, or do you think that there's some validity to that, Kali?
Now, again, 3 sides to a story, right? But I will say, like, that stuff does happen. At least I experienced it on a college team. Again, I was a freshman. I came in. I was playing a lot early on, and yeah, like you develop chemistry with guys, and we see it. Like some guys are petty that way. Like we'll see catchers. Like I knew for a fact the catcher that was a senior when I was a freshman. Whenever someone he wasn't cool with was on the bump, he wouldn't let him shake him off. He wouldn't let him do things like that. Like. If the tandem up the middle, the chemistry isn't on par, like shit goes bad, and yeah, there's guys that and I'm not saying that this is what Coop was doing. Okay, I'm saying
Right.
that it is a thing that happens, right? Like your buddy's making a play. Yeah, you're gonna extend a little more. You're gonna try and pick it out of the dirt. You're catching and your boy's on the mound and he shakes you off. Like, yeah, okay, you're gonna give him something else. You're gonna build that rapport with somebody that is gonna take your game to another level. Now, there's no way on earth to verify whether this is something that actually happens,
Of course.
but it is a thing that happens. Again, like Coop in the same light as Miggy is like we all loved Coop when he was here. We were all sad when he was traded. We were all sad when Miggy was traded. There's conversations to be had about it, and there's a way to dance around it. But all I can say is that if that's actually what happened, I believe something like that would happen. Absolutely. And again, I didn't play on the level that Jazz is playing on. I played marginal D2 baseball. But yeah, there are teammates that are petty like that, and that they won't make the extra effort for you. Like, again, if your boy's pitching if my boy's pitching and I'm playing third, a ball hard down the line, yeah, I'm gonna lay out for him. I'm gonna try and make a play. I'm gonna try and keep your ERA down. I'm gonna try I want you to get back out there and get more innings. But if the dickhead who I got in a fight with earlier was pitching and it's a hard ball down the line, maybe I'm not getting dirty. I wasn't exempt from it. I'm sure Jazz isn't exempt from it himself. It's like but that's why chemistry and camaraderie is so important on the field. And when the culture clicks, the team plays better. We saw that this year. Is the team last year the most popular, the best team we've had in the last 20 years? No, it's not. We had teams in the late 2000s that were incredible, that were probably pound for pound more talented than the team we have right now. But this team won 86 games, and this team went to the playoffs because they were together. Those guys believed in one another. And Jazz touched on that too. They don't see color in the clubhouse. They all get along now. Like, Jazz is the first one in, last one out, and guys are excited to be there now. And maybe that's not all Miggy and Coop and Alfaro's fault. Maybe it was Mattingly's fault. Maybe Mattingly was.
That's where I put the blame.
Well, you know what? I'm with Brenton on that one. And Philly, Donnie Baseball is my favorite baseball player of all time. But managerially, if he was letting this happen, absolute dumpster, because you can't let that happen, especially with your young stud. Like, you got to get that fixed somehow. Brenton, what do you think about the whole Coop thing?
So I think, like Callie said, I think it's possible that happened. But I also do think that when you're in a hostile environment like Jazz was, it's very easy to take a little thing and turn it into a slight against you. So while he was the everyday shortstop and he had 17 errors, and whenever somebody else was playing, like Coop was stretching and making catches, maybe Coop only stretched once or twice, but that was enough for Jazz, feeling the way he did because he's in this hostile environment, to take that personally, when maybe it wasn't, because last year, like, I didn't feel like there was anything between him and Coop. I thought the team gelled really well out of spring training. So, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not in the locker room.
Obviously,
but,
right. We're just spitballing here.
Like, with that situation, if everything else is going on, then it's very easy for me to think that, Coop could have done that. But it's also easy to say, like, he's already in defense mode, and he sees, like, Coop make these plays, and then he's like, well, Coop obviously doesn't like me, and he's doing it, and it's personal. And so, I just, and you just said it, like, it just goes back to Mattingly. Like, I'm in my professional life, like, I'm a leader of people. I have whole teams that report to me. And if I had an issue like this going on and I just let it go and said, oh, the leader on the team was going to figure it out, I'd be fired.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and not just fired, like, my company would be open to lawsuits. But it's okay for Don Mattingly to do this. And, Jazz didn't say anything bad about Mattingly, didn't blame Mattingly. He did say that Mattingly once stood up for him. But the other thing, too, is, like, Jazz is saying this to Derek Jeter. What the fuck is he doing? Like, if you're hearing this thing,
getting his money
I would go down and be like, hey, Don, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing anything out of the norm? Like, or is this just normal like rookie stuff? And like, I
And
can
to
go
be
back
fair,
to
we
my
don't know if he
office.
did it. We don't know if he did it.
Jazz said he didn't.
Okay.
That's what he said.
So we do know.
He said he just kept telling him to suck it up and just go with
That's
it.
fair. You're right. Yes.
And so, I have to just assume like not only was Rojas the problem, but I think the rot within the organization was a lot deeper. And I think, Jeter was obviously part of it. Mattingly was probably part of it. And as we've seen these people leave, we're said, okay, things are changing for the better. Like we have Skip in, and the locker room completely changed overnight.
Yeah.
Jeter leaves, and things start changing within how the organization does things. We start making a couple more trades, bringing in some better players, and we make the playoffs. So now we don't know, but Kim was there during this time. And so maybe her moving on might actually be a better thing for the organization overall. We might actually start seeing a healthy organization. Because what I got out of this interview was the Marlins rot went deep. And we didn't know it because we'll go back to the marketing team for the Marlins. I think they do a fantastic job of papering over everything.
Get you
all
a job,
the shit they have to do. Listen, man, they're on fire.
They are.
They've done a great job the last couple of seasons of just papering over a garbage team to get people out and get people to support the team. I think when you have that kind of protection around an organization, and it also helps, you don't have a ton of like high level beat writers like trying to like the Athletic's not there every day trying to break in and figure things out. Like it's easy to hide those things. And so I think what we're seeing is just not just like a small thing. I think it's an organization changing for the better is what I'm getting out of this. And I could be reading way too much into it, but
no, I think
it seems
you're right. Spaz, do you think this happens if he plays for any other franchise? Because I feel like this might have been the fact that, like, to Brighton's point, organizational. Because if he comes up in the Red Sox system, the Cardinals system, the Dodgers, the Yankees, any of those big clubs, I don't think that this flies. I think this happens.
I can't speak on it. I don't think so. Like just like Branton, I'm just kidding. I'm not a manager in any way, but but I gotta think that you have to nip it in the butt when anything happens, even as dumb as like a group of friends. You just have to nip anything that's gonna ruin the chemistry. You gotta stop that. So I don't think it happens in most clubs. Maybe it does. I don't know. I just don't think it should have gotten to the point that it did within us. And obviously now we're feeling better, and that's really all I care about. I don't know, man. Do you think it happens with the Yankees? I don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Yankees are so rigid that they don't even let people grow facial hair. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I think in the clubhouse though, like I feel like there's one thing for like rookie hazing, right? And then there's another thing to push a teammate to practice by himself. And so like I feel like in a Yankees organization, sure, they probably haze the rookies. They probably do stuff like that, but we've never heard of a story where they push somebody to practice on their own.
No, not at all. And I think in certain clubhouses you have those veterans that kind of command the locker room. Mickey Rojas isn't necessarily that guy. Let's say Jeff Cornine was here or Mike Lowe. Would they have demanded something different from Jazz? Would they have kind of forced the communication to be had instead of just letting him just ice himself out?
That's a different breed of ball player, though. You're talking two different breeds of ball players.
And also, go ahead, Brian.
I think the other thing is we're kind of seeing a change in generation in the clubhouses right now.
That's what I was going to say.
So Jazz is a much different ball player than what Mickey Rojas and like everybody who was in that clubhouse at the time. And Don Mattingly is 2 or 3 generations removed from Jazz.
Yeah, for sure.
So knowing how to deal with somebody like that, and Danny, like you summed it up perfectly when you mentioned the kids that you work with in high school. Like you have to deal with them differently than you would somebody in college right now or somebody who just graduated college.
100%.
Because It's a whole different generational change. And I think when you have like a situation like we did, where we had a lot of older ball players, we weren't bringing a lot of younger guys up at the same time. Jazz was on an island. You have a manager who is very old school. Like situations like this are going to happen. And, we didn't deal with it the right way because nobody knew how to deal with Jazz. But you've got a guy like Skip who's very, very close to when he actually played and probably experienced a change like this when he was a leader in the clubhouse and knew like, okay, I need to kind of address this differently than just saying tough it out. You'll be fine. Get through it. Because, like with my kids now, like if I tell my son to tough it out, he's 4. Like your generation is not going to be okay with tough it out. Like he needs to know why. He needs more detail behind like just tough it out. Why do I have to tough it out? How do I tough it out? And I don't think Jazz got those answers. And I think that's part of what led to the issue.
Callie, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, it was kind of like what Brandon said in terms of like generationally, it's just different. But I mean, who's to say that Marlins didn't have guys like that in the clubhouse? Like Miguel Cabrera has always been a firecracker. Like Dontrell Willis had a very expressive personality. Alex Gonzalez had a very expressive personality. And even he kind of talks about it. Like he talked about Griffey and playing for the Mariners when he was younger. He talked about Eric Davis. He talked about Barry Bonds. That all those guys were kind of looked at as arrogant ball players. So there was always some. It's not a new mantra that just now exists. But I think now it's two things right now. One, we're seeing the game change, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing baseball kind of get a bit of flair, and that's why there's so much friction, I think, among fans that like there's the old school baseball purists that don't want the bat flipping, they don't want the celebrations, they don't want the Euro steps, they don't want fist pumping after strikeouts and stuff like that. And there's kind of this newer, younger generation of baseball players that love all this shit. Like I love all that shit. Like make baseball.
So do I. I think it makes it a lot funner.
Kids game.
100%.
And then. So we're kind of seeing this divide that the game is changing within itself. And then the second thing, I think we're watching Jazz grow up before our very eyes. Like we're seeing him develop from like a young, raw, like he was a kid coming up through the system, man. Again, he was always the youngest on the team, and now he is a big leaguer. For whether we like it or not, that guy, Jazz Chisholm, is the face of the franchise. Yeah. Plain and simple. Like there's no argument there. He is the face of the franchise. And he's a young guy that hasn't had a ton of guidance, and he has the responsibility of the brand on his shoulders. And we're seeing him grow up and develop. I'm sure if you ask him directly, if he would have changed the way he handled anything in the last 3 years, he'd probably say, yeah, and looking back now, I can probably see where maybe I was out of line, or I said something, or I did something or whatever, but again, I can't hold someone's circumstances against them. Right. And Danny, like you, I'm in education, man. I see this shit all the time, bro. I mean, I see kids that, come from tougher situations that, everyone's out to get them. And there's a hesitancy to change. Mm-hmm. But again, at the end of the day, the only way people grow is when there's intentionality to grow. And I think we're seeing Jazz in a phase right now where he is showing intentionality and growing. Like Jazz, again, he's admitting himself. And I do think there's a level of maturity there that he's kind of turned this new leaf, and he's excited to come to the clubhouse, and he's excited to be at spring training, and he's not getting kicked out of big league camp, and from all we know, and from across the board, the culture in the clubhouse is great. And guess what? Jazz is the one still here, not Miguel Rojas, not George Alfaro, not Garrett Gruber. All those guys are gone, and the culture in the clubhouse got better. So there is something to say to that. There is something to say that, when Skip got the job, the first thing he did is he flew down and he had dinner with Jazz. So there are people within the organization that see kind of what we're seeing, that, this guy is special. And sure, yes, a lot of it is like, okay, this guy's clearly like the most athletic, talented guy, one of the most talented guys in the club. Again, face of the franchise, show cover athlete, Jordan Brand athlete, like, This guy has every like branding accolade attached to his name. So now, now it's time for him to grow. Now, hopefully what we see now is him become this true leader, and he's playing in a place he's comfortable, and he's playing in a place, that he feels welcomed and that he feels like he belongs in. He was putting up the numbers he was becoming an all-star. He was becoming the show cover athlete. He was becoming a Jordan Brand athlete when he admits he was unhappy playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see
what he's going to do this year.
I'm excited to see the Jazz Chisholm that is excited to show up and play every day.
Well, he said that he's everything he's done it without playing during the summer. So but hopefully he can get through the summer. And like Callie and I were talking about being in education, it's rewarding when you finally see the kids maturing, right? Because you see a lot of those cases, but a lot of those cases they finally grow out of that and they mature, and it's nice to see them get to the other side. And I think that that's where Jazz is, and I'm happy that it seems like he's maturing. I think if Mickey Rojas, if he met him for the first time coming into this season, I think that they might have a different relationship, because I think Jazz is in a different place maturity-wise. So I think that that's more or less where I am as far as the interview goes, because when I asked if it's good or bad and you guys didn't understand what I meant, all I'm saying is I think that if you interview Griffey, especially Barry Bonds, the arrogance, I believe, is probably there. And they probably think all the things that Jazz is saying. My thing is, I don't understand, or I don't know if it was good to put it on tape. I don't know if it was good to say it verbally in public. You can be that arrogant, but I think it comes off poorly in the public eye. So that's the only thing I meant by, is this really a good thing? Because if he goes to the clubhouse now, do you think everybody in the clubhouse sees the way he was speaking and thinks, cool, that wasn't that bad? Or are they thinking like, this guy talking shit about me behind, closed doors? Like, does he think I suck? I don't get a lot of playing time. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing that he did this interview so candidly. That was my only thing. I think that he is maturing. I'm glad that he's maturing. I think he's going to play better because of he's happy in his surroundings. I just don't know if this interview was the best thing for him. That was my only thing. So, Baz, you want to say something? Oh, okay.
Sorry. So hopefully now, if that's the case, if there are guys on the team that are uncomfortable with what he said, hopefully now it's a space where they can talk about it. Like, and I'm saying this completely arbitrarily. I'm not saying this to like pin up this person as your cancer or anything. I'm just saying let's say, like,
hypothetically,
Nick Fortes had a problem with what he said. Hopefully it's a place where Nick Fortes can go up to him and say, yo, like I kind of had a problem with how this said. Let's talk it out. Or maybe even Skip, can address like, hey, this is how it may have come across to people. Maybe you want to talk to your teammates. I think the difference now is I trust the people in that locker room. I trust Skip. I trust, even to an extent, the front office to step in and kind of do the right thing here and be like, hey, like this is what we need. And I think now every guy in that clubhouse everyone has a taste of the playoffs now.
Yeah.
And now hopefully with the culture that Skip is set, like if somebody did have a problem with what Jazz said, then, maybe it can be addressed and maybe they can have a conversation about it. But it feels like if he did this interview 2 years ago, it probably would have just isolated him more.
100%. And I still think that Coop might have friends that are still in that clubhouse. And you still might have some players in that clubhouse that are still old school in the way they think, that might not like the way that he went and he didn't mention them by name, but he made it very clear who he was talking about. And they might not like that either. So I just think that it just wasn't a good look or a good thing for him to have this interview. That's my whole thing. I don't see any positives that came out of this. Spaz.
He made a point to say, like, talk to me. There's a point where he says, I didn't like the way that people were talking to me because I didn't think I deserved that. Like something similar to that. He's like, talk to me. If you want to talk to me, just let me know in the open. And I'm like that with everyone else. He said that. So if somebody doesn't like this, he'd feel come to me. What you don't like? Okay, fine. Listen, I'm sure they'll hash it out and they'll fix it, but it won't be like before where he has to go watch anime in English and in Spanish in the nap room with starting Marte. He can he can have a normal work day because they talked about it. And he's like, these people weren't talking to me; they were yelling at me. I want people to come up to me and talk to me. So I think he's very open to that.
Yeah.
So
Bratton.
The last thing I'll throw in here is, we're talking about the organizational change and the problems and stuff. And if this is how the locker room was, this probably explains why we saw a lot of young players leave here and then explode. And why, we've seen a lot of young players stay and fizzle out.
Mm-hmm.
Because and who
That's a great
knows?
point.
Spazzy's boy Six Toe. He might just be happy now. And he's thrown 7 scoreless innings in spring training so far.
There you go.
And
Maybe it's connected.
Let's go.
But in seriousness, like I think you have to look at it and you have to say, like, maybe Jazz is going to an extreme. Maybe like he's exaggerating some things where we don't know, we weren't there. But you have to think a good majority of what he has said was really happening in the background. And if they're harassing the shit out of a guy who just hit a home run in his first at bat and did the Juan Soto shuffle to celebrate, if veterans are harassing a guy like that, as a young guy, why the fuck do I want to be here?
I agree. I thought that was bullshit also. And I could see that happening 100% because those old school guys are so against that new generation, that new change that Callie was explaining earlier. And I could see that happening. So I'm glad that those vets are out of the room. And I'm with Jazz as far as if that's the way they were acting, I can see why he would want to be away from everybody. I don't think that that's a good thing, though. I think somebody like Don Mattingly should have figured out a way to fix that because the manager, it's not the NFL. He's not drawing up plays. The manager is there to manage the team. And if you're not managing those personalities, then you're not managing the team. Donnie Baseball, I love you on the field, but as a manager, you're a piece of shit if this is what was happening under your watch. So, that sucks.
Yeah, I think the best way to kind of, now that we're talking about it, I think the best way to look at it is that it wasn't Jazz's fault. It wasn't Miggy's fault. It wasn't Alfaro's fault. At the end of the day, if there's a rift within the locker room, it is up to it's up to Mattingly to step in and say, all right, guys, fucking figure it the fuck out. Like we're like, let's lock the doors. Let's get the fucking cameras out of here. Let's talk this shit out. Like, I don't give like, you guys don't have to like each other, but we have to respect each other. And if Mattingly wasn't doing that, or I had to reach a breaking point in order for that to happen, like if I'm a coach, like I like, I've coached high school for, like 10 years now, bro. If one of my fucking high school guys take a kid's cleats, pours milk on them, and throws them in the trash, like, bro, you're not on this team anymore.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not gonna let a fucking 16-year-old get away with that, I'm not letting a fucking 30-year-old get away with it.
That was bullshit. And
like that is a point that that happened when Jazz first got there.
Yeah.
Because if you let shit like that go as a manager, as someone calling the shots and running the team, then everyone else looks around and say, oh, we can get away with this shit here. I can fuck around with Jazz. I can fuck around with all these kids because no one's gonna stop me. And
to that point, there has to be more to that story because I find it so hard to believe that it just went to just randomly cutting up his stuff. Like, that's so disrespectful that I even got annoyed hearing that. Like, there has to be more to that story because if there isn't, he's just a piece of shit. That guy Miggy Rojas.
I think there's a lot of stuff that happened to Jazz and other young players in that locker room that Jazz didn't bring up.
Yeah, he just brought up his shit.
Yeah.
And I can see that happening with veterans. Like I said, rookie hazing happens in every sport.
Yeah.
Some locker rooms, it's, make this guy sing karaoke in front of everybody, or make these guys go out and buy us all coffee or something, and that's fine. But
that's regular hazing.
Cutting
up somebody's custom stuff is bullshit.
That just speaks to like Don Mattingly, like letting shit like this happen even before this incident, because Rojas knew he could get away with it, or whoever did it. He didn't say who did it. But whoever did it knew they could get away with it, and Don Mattingly wasn't going to say shit, and Don didn't.
All right. We're coming up on the hour. Go ahead, Callie.
Yeah, there's a balance between rookie hazing. Like, hey, you're here, you're new, you got to earn your stripes. You got to, get yourself into the fold here. And then straight up harassment and abuse.
100%.
And like, again, like sending a guy to go get the coffee run. Hey, you're shagging all the balls in batting practice today. Hey, take my bat out here for me. Like, that's fine. That's shit. Like, that's normal, especially within the culture of baseball. Like, but to get a guy to fuck with a guy's shit like that, nah, dude. Like, Like straight up, like if that happened to 18-year-old Callie at in a fucking D2 school, North Carolina, like I was punching somebody, bro. Like I was getting in a fight straight up.
Yeah.
You know? So
I think a lot of people would be that way. And like I said, I think this interview, if he would have told all those stories and kept out the whole, who the hell are you? You suck. I'm the best and I'm the rookie. Like, I think that conversation, that would have gone over a lot better. But regardless, I think that he has showed that he is maturing. And I think that things are going to get better for him. And I'm hopeful that he's going to have a crazy season, because if he played that well when he was unhappy, I could only imagine how well he's going to play this year. All right, final thoughts, Spaz.
Tailgate starts at noon next Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Let's get some baseball going. We'll be there. Get there early, because I remember last season we opened up against the Mets, and these Mets fans took over an entire parking lot that's by like on the east side. They took over an entire parking lot, and
you don't have to worry about that with the Pirates.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe
no, they travel. Believe it or not, they travel.
They do travel. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. See you guys next week.
Bratton, final words.
As spring training comes to a close, guys, let's get ready for the real season.
This is when the fun
Jazz
starts.
is going to show out. TA is going to show out, and I'm expecting a Jazz extension this season. By the way,
He goes into arbitration again next year.
Oh my god!
I think we're going to avoid that.
Well, and Jazz says that he knows what he needs to do to win arbitration. Just stay healthy throughout the summer.
We got TAA. We got Nick Gordon. You don't make your all-star happy if you're going to send him to arbitration. That's my opinion.
Callie, any final words?
Yeah, guys, baseball's here. It's back. Spring training is tedious. We don't get all the games on TV. Blah blah blah. But man, we're back. This is gonna be the first opening weekend I miss in a very long time. I'm unfortunately going to be out of town. I'm going to be in Baltimore looking at houses with wifey. But I am going to the Saturday game for at Camden Yards, Orioles against St. Louis. Yeah, fuck you guys. I hear a dog barking. Oh my god.
Even the dog hates it.
But yeah, guys, get out to the ballpark, man. It's back. It's the best thing. It's the best thing on the planet, man. Go fucking watch this team. Gonna be a fun year. We might not win. Maybe we win 86 games again. Maybe we win 75. Maybe we win 105. I don't fucking know what this team's gonna do. But we're back, baby. We're back. By next week we'll have the season preview. So
yeah, that's it. Next Wednesday at 10 o'clock, going live for a season preview of the 2024 season. Starts the very next day, and that was my dog that made an appearance just now. His name is actually Jeter.
He hates the Orioles.
His name is Jeter.
Hates the fucking Orioles.
Yeah, 100%. All right. If you are listening on audio, we appreciate you listening all the way to the end. Please leave us 5-star comment, review, all that other good stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. And that's it. Spring training is done. We talked about Jazz for an hour. The face of the franchise. We're ready. Baseball is less than 7 days away. So catch us next Wednesday for the season preview. And then next Thursday, I'm going to try to make it out to the ballpark on Thursday. I know Spaz for sure will be there. And we'll see. So until the next one, have a good one.